Good evening and welcome to the Cedar Falls Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, October 13th. Number of ways you can join us tonight. You can watch live via YouTube or Zoom or on Channel 15. Looks like we have a quorum, and with that I'll call the meeting to order. Take roll.
Okay. Hartley?
Here.
Holst?
Here.
Larson?
Here.
Mr. Leeper is absent. Lynch?
Here.
Saul?
Here.
And Sherrod. Mr. Sherrod is also absent.
All right. We are in order, and with that we'll move on to the meeting minutes from September 22nd.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. At this point, we'll open the meeting up to public comment for any items that aren't on the agenda this evening. Did you say we had someone online?
We do, but
For
no
later.
hands raised.
Okay, now we will close public comment and move on to new business. We don't have any old business tonight. So the first item is mixed-use district site plan for Green Hill Village Car Wash.
I have that.
Thank you.
Good evening, commissioners. I'll get right into it. The applicant is proposing a new car wash located at 1125 Fountains Way, which is on the south side of Green Hill Road in the middle of the block between Algonquin Drive and Ashworth Drive, shown on the screen. The site is next door to the Casey's on Green Hill and is the second lot of 5 to be developed in the Green Hill Village Commercial 5th Edition. This property is located in an MU mixed-use residential district and the HCG Highway Corridor and Greenbelt Overlay District. The MU district requires review and approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. I will provide a quick overview of the relevant details for that. It is a standard drive-through format car wash with additional special detailing bays and a line of 10 vacuum bays bordering Fountains Way on the south. The Green Hill Village Master Plan was developed to consider a mix of uses, of which this site was identified for commercial uses. The building setbacks and parking requirements are satisfied by this site plan. Excluding the setback areas on the north and south edges of the property, 10% of the site needs to be green space. This requirement is also satisfied. A critical piece of your review this evening is the building design. Up on the screen, you'll see the elevations provided by the applicant. The elements listed in the MU district for review are proportioned in relation to buildings in the surrounding area, roof shape, pitch, and direction, patterns of solids and openings in material and design, materials and texture, color, and architectural features. Here are the renderings that were submitted. The proposed building has a contemporary industrial design with an overall height that is not dissimilar to the Casey's next door. The slanted roofs and corrugated metal panel siding would be relatively unique features in this neighborhood, but they appear to complement the industrial look that the applicant is aiming for. Of particular note are the significant window openings along the front facade that provide views into the interior of the car wash. This provides a unique design for a car wash, which historically has had blank walls with few window openings. Also, the colors and pattern of the design alternate sufficiently to provide visually interesting facades. Before moving on, a quick note about signage. There is signage implied by these renderings. However, no official details have been provided by the applicant. Renderings show signage on all 4 elevations, but will only be allowed on 2 wall surfaces. The applicant has indicated that a signage application will come during construction of the building. That signage will be required to come back here and be reviewed by Planning and Zoning Commission and Council. when that application is received. Now up on the screen, you'll see the landscape plan proposed by the applicant. The open green space, site plantings, street trees, and general trees meet the minimum requirements that are well distributed. The landscape includes a mixture of trees, shrubs, and berm elements distributed throughout the site and around the building. If after discussion there are no concerns by this body that the applicant should address, staff recommends approval of the car wash at 1125 Fountains Way, subject to conditions outlined in the staff report. With that, I turn the time back to the commission.
Thanks, Chris. Any commission questions for staff? Anyone representing the applicant wish to speak to this item? All right, with that, we'll open up to public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward. No one online?
No one online.
All right, we'll bring it back to the commission. Thoughts, questions?
So in the recommendation, it's the staff's recommendation, if we don't have any concerns, then we would go ahead and pass this tonight.
Correct.
I mean, it looks pretty straightforward to me, and I don't see that, I have any concerns about any of the issues with it, so I would go ahead and make a motion to approve the application, subject to meeting the signage requirements with the staff that discussed.
I'll second.
We have motion and a second. Any other comments? All right, we'll do a roll call vote.
Hartley,
Aye.
Holst,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Lynch,
Aye.
Saul.
Aye.
All right. Looks like that moves on to council. Next item of new business is preliminary plat for West Fork Crossing. Who will be presenting that?
I will be presenting that tonight. I know you had the staff report from Michelle Paisley, but she is out of the office today, so you'll have to put up with me, I guess. So you've seen this before. I know that the West Fork Crossing came through this body previously as a RP zoning application, and you did recommend approval on that. However, it got to council and there were some hiccups with the development agreement, and the applicant ended up withdrawing that application at council. So that rezoning application that you saw over a year ago was never approved by council. Now the same applicant comes forward to propose a standard subdivision in the R1 zoning district. That covers the northern portion of this site. As you can see, the northern portion of what you saw previously. It doesn't include the southern 60 acres down to West 27th Street. It's also owned by the same property owner, but it's still zoned A1 agriculture. So it's not ripe yet for development, so the applicant has requested to exclude that from the preliminary plat. Typically, with a preliminary plat, you plat your entire holdings, contiguous holdings, but in this case, they've requested that to be, and staff has agreed that seems reasonable to exclude it since it's not zoned for residential development at this time. So on to the basics of this subdivision proposal. They're currently proposing 64 residential building lots. There are 29 outlots for future development on approximately 120 acres. Now, it's a little bit unusual to propose, so they have all the streets and blocks laid out here in this preliminary plat, but only the first, what they're intended to be the first phase of the development, they've divided those into building lots, and then they've reserved everything else in the block layout as just one large outlot for each one of those blocks. So they haven't delineated building lots for the remainder of the preliminary plat. So what that means is that in future phases, this developer will have to come back for another preliminary plat for each one of those to set out the building lots. So this is a little bit unusual, but it's certainly allowed under the ordinance. Outlots A through E in the northeast corner, similar to what you saw previously, those lots are set aside to be deeded to the adjacent property owners to the north when they get to that phase of the development. Outlot M, which is a tiny sliver of a lot that's in the northwest corner, is intended to be deeded to the property owner directly to the north with the first addition. There is a phasing plan that was submitted with the application. That's a requirement now per the amendment we made to the subdivision code about a year ago. So there's 6 phases proposed. The first addition would connect Waterbury Drive to Union Road in kind of a circuitous fashion, but nevertheless makes that connection that was anticipated when Lexington Heights was built. The second addition, which is in yellow here, has an additional route to Union Road with that connection. You can see then there would be more than one route over to Union Road, and it would also have that connection to Cross Creek Drive that extends from Lexington Heights. The third addition extends then to the south, and then eventually that road there, that Vale Avenue, would then be extended through the ag. When that ag property is brought in for development, then the expectation would be that a street connection would be built to the south property line with West 27th Street. In the 5th and 6th editions, that would extend the neighborhood basically to the east. Some conditions that staff is recommending. One of the concerns expressed, I know, by a lot of the neighbors when this came before the commission previously was concern about construction traffic and construction. So one of the recommendations is that construction access for development of phase 1 and 2 should be from Union Road and not through the existing neighborhoods to the north and east. Staff also recommends a temporary construction access road be built to West 27th Street when the third addition is developed, and that's to serve then that development and probably the 4th addition as well. As they build out those areas, the idea is that the homes that you've already built in the first 2 phases then wouldn't be burdened by that additional construction traffic. So there'd be a way to distribute some of that construction traffic so not to be so bothersome to existing residents. Then to provide for adequate traffic circulation, a street connection to West 27th Street should really be constructed prior to development of the 4th, 5th, and 6th editions. So the traffic study and the recommendation with our staff was that by the time you get to the 4th edition, you're really going to need another route out to a main thoroughfare. So the land to the south really needs to be brought in for development by that time, or it will just delay the development until that happens of the 4th, 5th, and 6th edition. And then the expectation that Cross Creek Drive would also be similar to what you saw in the previous iterations of West Fork, that would be extended in some fashion down to West 27th. So there'd be 2 critical street connections south to West 27th when this whole entire neighborhood is built out. With regard to stormwater management, there are 4 different stormwater management facilities proposed based on how the land slopes and drains. Each buildable lot will have a drainage easement to the direct water flow to one of these stormwater basins. The engineering department here has reviewed the stormwater report and agrees with the preliminary findings at the preliminary plat stage. At final plat stage, of course, they'll have to have more detailed information about stormwater. There are 2 wetlands, small wetlands shown on the plat, and with the green stars you see on the screen here, those they'll be mitigated through the purchase of wetland credits according to the applicant. And that would be required at final plat of those particular additions. So the streets you're familiar with the street layouts, is very similar to what you saw previously. A well-connected street pattern here, no cul-de-sacs are proposed. The streets are all stubbed to the property boundaries to allow for future extension to those abutting properties. Once again, the critical street connections are Waterbury to Union Road in the first edition, and then 2 connections south to West 27th Street in the future. And then a future connection to the high school, to the location where the high school has proposed their west driveway. Traffic calming measures are illustrated on the plat and key intersections. They've shown traffic circles just to slow the traffic down along some of those straight streets. Sanitary sewer would be extended from Waterbury Drive. This is in the Cherrywood Interceptor Sewer District, so tapping fees would be required at final plat. There is, just want to note, there is an additional sewer access will be available from the south in the future. The city is extending the sewer as part of the high school project, and so then it will be available then to serve that southern A1 property. So that becomes then buildable with extending sewer from the south. Trails and parks are shown on this plat, similar to what you saw previously. There's a 10-foot trail on Union Road that's currently under construction right now. The developer would be asked to contribute for what would be typically a sidewalk width of 5 feet. If there wasn't a trail there, there would be a 5-foot sidewalk requirement with the subdivision. So paying their proportional share basically of the cost of that. And then there's another, in the green here, a trail that connects to the north from Waterbury, and that would then be picked up with the new Aldea subdivision when that portion of the development is built. And then that would eventually provide a connection to the Robinson Dresser Sports Complex. So a nicely connected subdivision with trails and wide sidewalks to provide good access for bikes and pedestrians. And then there's a 2.4 acre park proposed in phase 4 of the development next to what will be a stormwater management area, so providing some nice green space there and open space for this new neighborhood. So with that, staff recommends gathering any comments that you might have, or anything from the public, and then continuing the discussion at the next meeting, October 27th. And of course, these are the recommendations that I just spoke about in the staff report. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Karen. Any questions for Karen or for staff?
Yeah, I have a question. Isn't there a neighborhood adjacent to it that streets could connect to? I don't know if it's the trailer park or whatever you call it. Is there a reason why none of those streets connect?
Oops, sorry, I did something here. So you can see that the streets do connect over to the abutting property to the west in the street layout. Can you see that up on the screen? So there are street stubs to the west property line.
Okay.
There's three connections to those properties. Now there'd be additional connections when that property, the A1, the agricultural property to the south, is developed in the future. There'd be some additional connections probably in that location as well, but that's not something we're looking at tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
And do those westerly connections, do they connect into the mobile home park as it is now?
No, the mobile home park, I believe, is further to the south. So where the A1 land is to the south.
Okay. Any other staff questions? This time we'll sorry, go ahead, Marty. Oh, this time we'll invite the petitioner to add anything to the staff presentation.
I believe. Do we have Tim Verheyen? He's the engineer for the project, maybe on Zoom?
Tim is on Zoom.
Hey guys, this is Tim. I'm on the road, so sorry I couldn't
hear the question.
I don't think it was a question as much as if you wanted to add to anything that was presented.
Sorry, I still couldn't get it. I think Corona from ISG might also be on, so she might have better connection than I do.
No, it's only Tim.
Okay. Well, if he'll be available for questions at this point, we'll open up to the public. If anyone has any questions, please come forward.
Yeah,
Please.
my name is Mike Goen. I have the property to the north of this subdivision, and I sent out a bunch of questions to Michelle, but apparently that hasn't been distributed to everybody, so I'll go ahead and go with those. One of the big questions I have is the storm retention area that butts up to my property. I really don't understand how that's going to be contoured in and how this wetlands works. And when I see a comment that they're going to buy wetland credits from somebody, that makes me pretty nervous. I don't know exactly how that works, but that kind of like energy credits allow you to go ahead and use energy, and you buy credits from somebody else to help get away from that responsibility. Right now, there's a big hill going to the east off of that wetlands area. So I don't know if they plan on leaving it just like it is and let the water flow into that little bit of wetlands area and then feed into my property as it comes, or how they're going to hold that. But apparently it says it's not going to be regulated in any way. So that's one big concern I have. I don't know if we want to, Tim want to answer any of that while we're going, or?
I'd say go ahead and present any other questions or
Okay.
concerns that you have, and we'll go from there.
The other part of it is my house has a septic system. Like I said, I'm right to the north of these 10 lots that will butt up to my property. So I'm going to get a bunch of neighbors right next to my property. We have a septic system. And so I'm wondering what I can do to make sure I have access to hook up to the sewer or water at a later date if I decide to sell my house.
And your property is the one, you're right off of Union.
I'm right off of Union.
The lawn.
1712 Union Road.
Yeah, so you're along that first piece directly to the north on
Right.
Union.
So I'm concerned if we build houses there, then I don't have any way to get into a sewer hookup. I want to sell my house. Blackhawk County would say, you're close enough to a sewer, you somehow have to hook up to it. And those landowners, homeowners won't allow me to dig their yards up to go do that. So maybe they could stub off a section of a sewer line over to my property edge, and that would allow that to happen during initial construction. Number 3, I have Laramie Street will dead end into my property, which I can see that, consider that a plus for a lot of ways. I just would like to have some assurances that I could have access from that into my property and put up a fence gate to make sure that unwanted people don't come in.
I'm guessing that's where you can get some sewer.
Well, it's a long ways away from my sewer, my house.
Yeah,
That's quite
but
a
that's
ways.
probably where it's going to be, I would bet.
Well, we're talking a lot of money for me to be able to run a sewer line, and then depending on what the depth is whether I can really do all that. So, anyway, so I guess that could be a possibility. Traffic concerns, like everybody else, we're dumping New Alday onto Union Road. We're dumping all these houses onto Union Road. The streets aren't very wide in this new addition, so parking could be somewhat of a concern. So,
All right, thank you. Does Tim want to comment on any of those items?
Tim, did you hear the questions? he did.
We will be coming back at the next meeting, so I think we could take a lot of these questions and get answers from the applicant and also from city engineers if there's some of these other infrastructure questions.
Yeah.
Any other public comments or questions? Anybody new online?
No.
Okay. This time we'll close the public comment for this item and bring it back to the commission.
So the staff is generally pleased with, with the overall concept and layout?
It's very similar to what we reviewed previously, other than not having those southern 60 acres included. Generally with some of the conditions about timing of those street connections to the south.
Yeah, so,
And I think the developers agreed to all that. I think they probably feel like by the time they get to that fourth edition, there'll be something happening on that southern piece of ground.
I guess that's the big question, is how does, I mean, there's a big gap there, once you get past the, first couple ones, to make that connection, because that has been a big discussion item, connecting back to 27th Street.
On the last slide, you had one of your, in those conditions, that construction entrance would be required during the third phase to 27th Street, and then permanent entrance at the fourth phase, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the idea would be I'm guessing they would try to put the temporary construction road in a location that might be similar to where they'd put the permanent road then.
Become permanent eventually, yeah.
I have a question. So how can we address Mr. Goins' concern about the wetlands that could potentially flow into his land? If they're not going to be doing anything about it, they're just going to buy credits. So how would that?
So the wetland's already there. So the wetland's there, and so the requirement for stormwater management is basically you have to accept any water that's currently coming on your property and manage the water that's coming off of your property. So they have to show that they're doing no harm to the adjacent property owner. So they should be receiving no more water, and sometimes you're receiving less water than you were previously with adjacent property owners. That's true. If you've got uncontrolled farmland right now, when you come in and do stormwater management, usually you're controlling the water better. So with regard to the wetlands, it's such a small piece of wetland there, and that is where the water goes, so it's a logical place to have the stormwater management there. And with regard to preserving such a small piece of wetland, I think the general best practice, what the Army Corps anymore tries to recommend is paying for credits, because then you can build some real high-quality wetlands in the best location, and I think that's worked pretty well, rather than to try to preserve little tiny pieces that may not really survive very well once development occurs. So I think that's generally what they would like to do, but of course we'll get more details at final plat, because they'll have to provide exactly what they're planning to do to mitigate that.
Okay.
And one of the questions about providing service, particularly sewer service, to any abutting property, I believe that's a requirement of a new plat, correct, to bring services to. Is that being considered, the location at Laramie Street? Or
So that is a question I'd want to pose to the engineering department to find out how, I don't have the plat in front of me, so I can't tell you if there's, but typically, like Mr. Hull said, there's oftentimes you use the roadway to extend the sewer and stub it to the property line, so that might be a location. Also along Union Road, there might be opportunities to, have the sewer in that location and get access in that way, so.
Very good. Anything else? So no action from us at this time. We're going to be looking at this for approval at the next meeting, correct?
That's right. That's what we would recommend.
Okay.
And
Very
we'll
good.
try to bring back answers to those questions.
Yeah, that would be great. All right. Well, with that, do we have any updates for the commission?
I have no updates.
I have a question. I know that this council approved a project on West First Street like a month ago, and it's never gone to planning and zoning. It was the West First one that Wendell brought forth, and we had approved it. I have not seen it on the city council agenda.
We have to work out the details of the development agreement first.
Well,
The-
I talked to him, and, because we're friends, and I see him every once in a while, and he said that he was kind of told that even though planning and zoning approved it, it wasn't going to happen until he put the street through. Is that true? That you guys want as a city?
So the PC2 zoning district requires that there be a developmental procedures agreement approved with any rezoning to PC2. So we have to work out that agreement, just like with Pinnacle Prairie, we had to work out that development agreement before council could vote on it. So this is a similar, so we're in negotiations with them about that development agreement and finalizing the details of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and one of the things the commission, everybody agreed at that meeting that that was a critical street connection, so we're working out how that will happen in the future.
Thank you.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.